Hello, everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first, I don't know how many subscribers we have because this was recorded ahead of time, but shout out to all the subscribers, and special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members Y2KHA, Brendon, Mikel, Scott, Todd, Hasher for MVP, VGK Tiger 75, Salacious, Crumb, Ryguy, and Brendon Nelson's haircut. So, I feel like we've done a pretty good job breaking down the obvious and big areas of need for the Seahawks going into the 2021 offseason. So now we're going to loop around and take a look at the less dire areas, or the potential areas of need. Places where it would be nice to improve, and there may be a chance to improve this offseason, but I don't think we need to. I feel like we don't need to make a huge deal out of addressing these positions. So I've got 3 of these, and we're going to go through them one by one, and we're going to treat each area with the seriousness that it deserves, but we also recognize that if things stay as they are right now, it's probably not the worst thing in the world. So we're starting with the backup wide receivers. So we know we have DK Metcalf, who is great and incredible and awesome and clearly one of the best receivers in football already. For the moment, we have Tyler Lockett under contract, and we know he's coming off probably his best season ever. Although, I do want to say, I believe he's starting to get to the end of the road, and it's not impossible that he gets cut or traded before the season starts. But for now, he is on the team, and for the moment, he's still a very credible player. After that, however, Philip Dorsett, I think he's going to be gone. If we bring him back, I don't get that. David Moore could be gone. He is a free agent to be. We don't know if we're going to bring him back or not. And after that, other than Freddie Swain, who had a passable rookie year, and Josh Gordon, who will probably never play football again, there's nobody else on this receiver roster who we can count on in the slightest. None of these guys have proven anything. So it needs to be discussed. What are we going to do at the number 3, number 4, number 5, maybe number 6 receiver spots? And obviously you don't need a stud at all 6 wide receiver positions, but it does need to be considered. We need to consider the possibility that if David Moore's not back, if Philip Dorsett's not back, then the number 3 receiver is Freddie Swain, and I don't know if you want to put that much on him. So, yeah, let's talk about backup receiver or third-string receiver, however you want to put it, the number 3 receiver. If we don't bring back David Moore, if we don't bring back Philip Dorsett, then the in-house replacement would be Freddie Swain, and then you would have kind of a mishmash of guys who haven't done very much yet, like Penny Hart, John Ursua, Cody Thompson, Aaron Fuller, who's my favorite. And it's not unreasonable to think one of those guys could come out and be good, but I don't know if you want to bet the 2021 season on it. So that's an option. You could just say, hey, Freddie Swain, it's your time to shine. Hey, Penny Hart, time to justify your roster spot. Aaron Fuller, you're the next Doug Baldwin, or maybe you're still a John Ursua fan or a Cody Thompson fan, whatever. It's possible. But if you don't like that, then you're going to be looking to free agency or the draft. And let's start with free agency. Let's take a look at the receivers who are free agents in the upcoming offseason, excuse me, and see what makes sense. So there are kind of 2 layers to this, because there is the universe that we live in right now, where Tyler Lockett is still a Seahawk and is probably going to be a Seahawk in 2021. And then there's the universe where we cut or trade Tyler Lockett, which I think is a real possibility. If we cut or trade Tyler Lockett, then I think there are some names that are going to be on the table. Guys like Allen Robinson and T.Y. Hilton. We may bring those guys in and give them $10 million a year plus. If not for that, if we are just looking for somebody to replace David Moore, here's what I see. Sammy Watkins would be the first guy. This is somebody that Seahawks fans have been talking about a fair amount in my chats. I've seen him being discussed on message boards. So let's take a look at Sammy here. His career has been something of a disappointment ever since his first 2 seasons where he did produce a lot in Buffalo. He had a lame duck third season, got kicked to the Rams for a year, didn't do that much. Then he went to Kansas City for 3 years and was a decent piece on a elite offense these last 3 seasons. I don't know. This doesn't really do all that much to impress me. I understand he's playing behind Tyreek Hill and stuff, but this isn't great. And I don't know. When I look at this, I see somebody who might not be all that much better than David Moore. So if you take a look at his PFF grade for 2020, where he had, I think, less than 500 yards from scrimmage, his rating was 64.4, which is fine. And his projected contract is, can somebody explain this to me? How is this guy who has barely over 1,000 receiving yards over the last 2 seasons worth 2 years, $21 million? So right away I look at this and I say, that number 4 overall draft pick doesn't matter that much anymore, bro. You're not getting 2 years, $21 million. You couldn't even break out in the Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid offense. So Sammy Watkins, I assume, is going to get a lot less than this. I think this projection is born of maybe using 1 or 2 bad examples. So I would say that if Sammy Watkins is willing to sign for something more like 2 years, $12 million, then that becomes viable. But there's no way I'm paying $10 million a year for the stats I just showed you. Those, no, get out of here. All right, next we are going to go down past Sammy Watkins and take a look at Marvin Jones. Now, this is a guy whose production has actually been pretty impressive in recent times, and he's probably going to get paid a decent chunk of money this offseason. So let's take a look at Marvin Jones. He's been a Bengal, pretty productive there. He's been a Lion, was pretty productive there outside of the 1 year he only played 9 games. Almost had a 1,000-yard season last year. So this is a guy who has been productive. He is kind of old, so that's not ideal, but he can still play football. So you could bring him in, and you know what you would know what you're getting still. His PFF grade last year was quite good, almost 74. And this would be a guy you would have to spend a decent amount of money on. Marvin Jones projects on Spotrac to be worth about $10.5 million a year. Unlike Sammy Watkins, I think this may have some roots in reality. He may command this kind of money. So Marvin Jones is kind of the guy you go get if you just decide you want to go all in on receivers. You want to give Wilson no excuse to not be great. You want to give Shane Waldron no excuse to not be great. If that's your angle, then this is what you do. Now, you're going to have to give up something on defense in order to get somebody like Marvin Jones, probably. 3 years, $32 million, that's tough. That's tough. You're going to have to give up a lot of other stuff you might want. But if you want to go this route, if you just want to give Wilson all the toys you could imagine and just splurge on receiver, Marvin Jones Jr. would be the guy. All right. Next on the list, we have a guy who's a little bit more of a middle ground between that and, actually investing in other positions as a primary goal. Again, there's a huge difference between the Seahawks with Lockett going into 21 and not having Lockett going into 2021. You could see us really going after these top guys if we don't have Lockett, but if you don't get Lockett, then another name that catches my eye a lot is Breshad Perriman. Formerly a Jet, he was also a Buck, he was a Raven. He's been bouncing around. He is one of the most interesting options you could pick in that getting him could go either way. He could be a speed demon out of the slot for you, or he could get injured and never get on the field, because that's been his career so far. He had a very nice year in Tampa in 2019, although he probably swindled the Jets a little bit because his stats were inflated by a stretch of games where he got to play without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But in fairness, he went to the Jets and played pretty decently, had 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, 30 catches, very low completion catch percentage, which is what you would expect from a guy like Perriman so far in his career, but he's a big play threat and he's very, very fast. So his PFF grade last year was actually okay, 63. A little over 63. And Spotrac thinks that he's going to get a 3-year, $26.5 million deal, to which I say no. No, no, no. This is giving him way too much credit for his first round draft pedigree and his 2019 season, which people have kind of figured out by now is a mirage. I would not be surprised if Perriman got something like a 1 year, $5 million or $6 million prove it deal. Something like, okay, prove you're actually good, and then you get paid. So, Breshad Perriman is interesting. I'm not saying I would advocate for this, but I know the dude who's talented, and if he has a healthy 2021, you might just get yourself a bargain that he can then use to leapfrog into a bigger contract. But Perriman's out there. The last name I'm going to go into here is somebody who I've mentioned in the past, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm not going to go into any stats on this guy, but John Ross, he's a free agent. His very unlikely he's going to get any real offers because he's been such a poison and a miserable player so far in his career. But like with Perriman, we know the talent is there. It just hasn't manifested itself at all, really. So he's fast. He played his college football in Washington. This could be the Philip Dorsett of 2021, except maybe this time we get lucky and Ross is actually able to stay healthy. Again, I'm not going to show you any stats because they're all going to be pathetic because John Ross's stats have been really bad in his career. But if you want to maybe buy low, this is your guy. You could get John Ross for maybe the veteran minimum, less than $1 million, and the upside is tremendous. So those are the receivers who I like. There are others that would be cool. There are others that would be good. You know, I would not get upset if we signed somebody like a Willie Snead, but those are the four guys that stand out to me as free agents. Now let's take a look at the draft. And again, we are going to kind of live in two different universes here, the one where we keep Lockett and the one where we don't. If we keep Lockett, I really don't want to spend a second-round pick on a receiver. I don't. But if we cut Lockett, then it becomes a possibility. Not one that I love, but one that I would be all right with. So let's do 1 second-rounder. Let's say we use our second-round pick on a receiver. If we do that, the guy who jumps out to me that we could get based off current draft projections, if you take a look at the draft network here, would be Dwayne Eskridge, the receiver from Western Michigan. He's a smaller guy. If you take a look at what he's done at Western Michigan, he's been there 5 seasons actually. He's been pretty productive. He seems versatile. I like his talent. Seems like he could play on the outside. He seems like he can play in the slot. It's a little rare for somebody of his size to be able to play on the outside, but it sounds like he can do it. I feel like there's something here. I feel like his stock might be a little lower than it should be because he missed most of 2019. He only had 3 catches that year. So this is the guy who caught my eye if we use our second-round pick on a receiver. But I don't really want to do that, and I don't think we will. So let's go down to the guys that are within reach if you use a 4th-round or a 5th-round pick on a receiver. So the first guy who, in my quick and immediate research on drafting receivers that I liked was Amari Rodgers of Clemson, another smaller guy. One thing that stood out to me when I was reading about Amari Rodgers was that he's really good at run after the catch. He's built like a running back, and he uses it. He was the go-to guy for Clemson last year, and obviously Clemson was a great team. They made the playoff. His size is a little bit of a concern for the way he plays, maybe, but I think that this guy could be a future slot receiver. I think this guy fits well as a slot receiver. If you look at his production in college, he was solid as a sophomore and a junior, and then he blew up as a senior. All 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns as one of Trevor Lawrence's go-tos. And yeah, this would be nice in the 4th, maybe even the 5th round. All right. So after you go through Amari Rodgers, the next guy that kind of caught my eye was Demetric Felton, a wide receiver from UCLA, another smaller guy. Profile sounds a little like Lockett to me. And the interesting thing about Demetric Felton is that for the first 3 years of his college football career, he played receiver. And then as a senior, if you take a look here, he played running back. So he has experience doing both. Last year, he had almost 700 yards rushing. The year before, he had almost 600 yards receiving. And in 2019, he actually had 300 yards rushing too. So he basically played both positions, running back and wide receiver. So there's a little versatility if you're into that. And I don't know, this caught my eye. I kind of like the versatility there. It helps save on roster spots and gives you some flexibility if you lose a player or things don't quite go your way. All right, so we're going to do one more guy. We're going to scroll down a little bit here. We're going to take a look at Marlon Williams, receiver out of UCF. There was a UCF wide receiver last year who I kind of liked, Gabriel Davis. This year, I'm going to briefly highlight another one, Marlon Williams. He's a little bit bigger, and it seems to me that he could play on the outside. He's certainly not as big as a DK Metcalf, but he's bigger than a lot of the guys that I was just looking at. He could definitely play on the outside. It seems like he's a physical receiver. If you take a look at his production, it's quite impressive. In 2020, he had over 1,000 yards. He was productive as a junior as well. So those would be the draft guys that stood out to me. Not that there aren't others that I would like. There are other receivers in the draft that I would go for. There are other free agent wide receivers I would go for. But if the Seahawks find themselves in need of a receiver this offseason, this is where I would go. Now, if we keep David Moore, there's not really going to be a need. If we keep Tyler Lockett, there won't be a big need, even if we lose David Moore. But if a need makes itself known, this is how you can address it. Peace out. Go Hawks. See you guys in stream later. By the time you're watching this, I should be very close to being back on my computer and actually able to game, so those streams should be returning soon. And yeah, peace out, go Hawks. See you guys in the near future.